I'm in the right house, baby. I was sorted this way. Okay, hey guys. Yeah, I know I'm a giant dork. But hey, we're reading Dudley Dursley and the Sorcerer's Stone. Comment down below if you like it. And I'm saving up money to buy a new mic. Oh my gosh, I'm saving up to buy a Blue Yeti. But right now it's just a headset microphone combo, and it's horrid. I'm sorry again. My family's not here, but my dog is, so yeah, my dog Dobby. So if she barks, oh my gosh, I've been slipping in and out of British, all day. Well, that's all I'll allow myself for my intro. I'll allow myself a minute for intros. Yeah, why not? Sorry that my intros are way too long, but, let's get to it. Comment down below if you like the British accent. Today I will be doing it without. Now, let's get going. Slipping out of his mother's grasp to throw it away. Praying fervently that he hadn't just screwed himself, he gathered what items he could easily hold and left the kitchen, taking the toys upstairs to forget about them. Behind him, he heard Petunia murmur, "They must have had a fight. I'll go call Miss Polekiss to let her know." As she walked away, Vernon warned Harry to behave and not do anything strange or unnatural, and Dudley huffed a laugh. He set his gift down on the smallest bedroom, then stared at it, frowning, before returning downstairs to bring everything else up. The racing bike was banished to the garden for the time being, and finally he sat down to eat his cooling breakfast. Vernon and Petunia had, by then, disappeared from the kitchen, and Harry was at the sink, the sleeves of his too large t-shirt rolled up as far as he could get them. Scrubbing furiously at the dirty dishes, Dudley picked at his food again, frowning again. Food frowning again. Guys, I'm gonna go pick up some water. Be right back. This won't take but a second. Not at all amount of time for you. Okay, I'm back. Dudley picked at his food, frowning again. It had taken Harry several years to stop looking as if he wanted to hex him on sight. For all that they'd gotten in touch after the war, and their children grew up as playmates. If it hadn't been for his marriage to Padma and the look on his cousin's face at the wedding had been priceless, they probably wouldn't have become so friendly at all. And even now it was awkward to be around each other for long. If this wasn't an illusion, and Dudley had to admit it seemed too elaborate for that he had a chance to correct some of his wrongs early, it would be stupid to waste it. Decision made, he got to his feet, and Harry looked up in mild alarm. Putting back on his belligerent face, Dudley said, "Finish up my breakfast, Harry. I don't want it." And he elbowed the smaller boy away from the sink as gently as he could before taking up the washing himself. Harry started, but fell into a frustrated silence, unable to think of anything to say. "Go on," Dudley said gruffly. "Don't make yourself sick. I won't clean that up." He could feel his cousin hover uncertainly behind him, then move away, and when Dudley glanced back, Harry was shooting wary looks at the door between bites of fried egg. It seemed that for the moment he'd chosen to count his blessings, thinking that if he could finish fast enough, no one would suspect anything. So focused was Dudley on keeping an eye on Harry that he was astonished to find that the dishes were suddenly clean and neatly put away. When he stared perplexed, Harry shuffled up behind him and attempted to regain control of the sink, so he could take care of his now empty plate and silverware. Dudley obliged and took the dishes once they'd been washed and quickly dried them before putting them away. When it was done, they stood in awkward silence before Harry blurted, "Why are you being nice?" Without thinking, Dudley replied, "Because it's not nice the way we treat you." Harry stared at him before either could say anything else, though Petunia returned. She hesitated, and Dudley stepped towards her to save the trouble. She smiled at him and straightened his hair. "Miss Polekiss is bringing over your presents that she and Piers got you, and then we'll be on our way to the zoo, sweetum," she said. "Why don't you go play with your new things?" Dudley, seeing his opportunity, decided that he could probably get away with one more thing before the zoo trip. He gazed up at his mother with every shred of wide-eyed innocence he could dredge up. "Mum, I've been thinking," he heard Harry snort quietly in spite of himself, and had to struggle not to grin. Even he could admit his younger self hadn't been fond of the exercise. "Can't Harry sleep in the spare bedroom? I don't like anything in there, and I want my new things to go in the cupboard. He struggled momentarily to come up with something slightly believable. "It's easier to reach, and it has a latch." It was pathetic, but he'd never been much good at lying. Fortunately, his mother had never been much good at resisting him. Though if I'm being honest, he thought sourly, that was probably because I'd throw a fit if I didn't get my way. Petunia looked like she swallowed a lemon, but when he let his lower lip tremble on ominously, she released a smile that was more of a grimace. "Yes," she said after a moment, sounding false cheery. "Yes, of course, anything for you, my darling." To Harry she snapped, "Get your things upstairs in 5 minutes or you'll be sleeping in the garden shed." Oh my gosh, sorry. I went British for a minute. Petunia looked like she'd swallowed. Shooting Dudley a look of pure disbelief, Harry darted out of the kitchen before she could change her mind. Dudley made himself beam at his mother before escaping upstairs himself. They made it to the zoo with only minor casualties. Vernon shouted at the traffic, then shouted at Harry after the boy made a poorly timed comment about floating motorcycles, then shouted about the price of parking. The boys, Dudley reflected on how strange it was to be back in the age group, spent most of their time trailing behind the adults who were rather desperately trying to get Dudley excited about the animals. Honestly, he couldn't even remember why his younger self had wanted to go to the zoo in the first place, but he obligingly looked at every exhibit they passed. Harry, on the other hand, was staring at everything, head swiveling round sometimes so sharply that Dudley half worried that it had come right off. When they stopped for ice cream, Dudley ordered 2 and gave 1 to Harry, and the lady in the van cooed over what a sweet boy he was, which made his parents immediately puff themselves up in pride and forget their annoyance at Harry having anything nice. After lunch, they wanted to go to the reptile house. Dudley kept an eye on his cousin and made sure to keep a reasonable distance away, because while he didn't remember exactly how the snake had got out, he knew if it happened again, Harry would be locked up for a very long time. He felt afterwards that he should have realized they wouldn't be so lucky. One moment he was staring intently at a lizard and trying not to worry about the cage thing, and the next Petunia was grabbing Vernon's arm and hissing, "Vernon, that stupid boy is talking to a snake. People are starting to stare. Make him stop this instant." There was a strange note of fear in her voice, and Dudley stowed that away to think about later. He trailed after Vernon, the two of them making a beeline for Harry, who was obliviously chattering with a very familiar boa constrictor. Dudley arrived in time to hear Harry utter a series of complicated hissing noises before Vernon grabbed the boy by the scruff of the neck. He was red-faced and gearing up for good rant when Dudley purposely trod on his own shoelace and tripped into him. Vernon dropped Harry, the glass on the cage disappeared, and Dudley stared up from where he'd fallen to the floor as Vernon toppled into the cage. The boa constrictor took his leave, politely slithering around the large man in its former home, and paused only to hiss at Harry before serenely making his way to the door, snapping playfully at the heels of panicking zoo patrons. Harry and Dudley exchanged a horrified look, and then turned to stare at Vernon, who had gotten to his feet and was now beating his fist on the pristine glass of the cage, roaring angrily. The zoo director apologized to them personally, offering tea, but Vernon, newly freed from the cage and bristling with anger, completely ignored him in favor of hauling everyone into the car. The drive home was uncomfortably silent, and when they arrived, Vernon banished Harry to the cupboard, only to get angrier when he was reminded that Harry had relocated. He collapsed on the sofa in wordless rage, Petunia hurrying to fetch him a brandy, and Harry fled upstairs. Dudley deemed it safe to follow, and spent the rest of his afternoon helping Harry to attempt to quietly clean the room up. They didn't speak much, but by the time the dinner was ready, they'd managed to clear up most of the useless junk. A brandy. That's my name, Brandy. Woof. Why did I say woof? I'm just weird. Things continued in this fashion until July. Harry still had to do chores, but Dudley helped when he could get away with it. And when Harry inevitably got yelled at for something, they'd hide in Harry's new room and play video games. Dudley didn't dare push his parents too far, not when Harry's Hogwarts letter would be arriving soon, and he was wary of trying too hard to be nice to Harry, who was intensely suspicious of him. But until summer break began, he did his best to see that Harry was left alone at school, and they slowly entered into an uneasy alliance. By early July, it was abundantly clear to Dudley that he was not, in fact, living in an illusion. Padma had gotten himself several books on magical theory when they first started dating, and he knew enough to summarize that no one would go into this much trouble for him, of all people. Something this elaborate would take multiple people, all with an outstanding grasp on charms, and he doubted that many wizards would have an understanding of little winging intimate enough to recreate it. The hows and whys of his apparent time travel weighed heavily on his mind, however, and because he expected things to be much the same as they had the first time around, it came as quite a shock when they didn't. You see, this is why it's called Dudley Dursley and the Sorcerer's Stone. Sorry, I read this before you guys did. He was in the kitchen with Harry eating cereal. Both of them pretending that they couldn't smell the clothing Petunia was dyeing on the stove. When the doorbell rang, Vernon shouted from a distant corner of the house, and Dudley got to his feet before Petunia could order Harry to the door. "I'll get it," he said, and slipped out of the room. He was pretty sure this was the day that the letter came, but when he looked down at the mail in front of the door, he didn't see parchment. He picked it up anyway, then, on a hunch, stood on his toes to look through the peephole. Seeing a pointed hat, he opened the door. There was a witch on the front step, except that it wasn't just any witch. It was Minerva McGonagall. Sorry, I had to do it. He only met her once or twice, and then only because she was headmistress in his time, but there was no mistaking her, though she was younger and stronger. Dudley swallowed, then he realized he was staring and said, "May I help you?" "I believe so," she said, with an air of faint amusement, as though she was used to seeing gobsmacked expressions on people's faces. "Are your parents at home?" "Yes," Dudley said, then quickly jerked the door open fully and stepped aside. "Please, come in." She inclined her head, then entered the house in a graceful swish of robes, and he shut the door behind her before hurrying to the kitchen. Mom, someone's here to see you and Dad," he said a little breathlessly, and sat at the table as McGonagall swept in. Petunia looked up and then shrieked. Harry jumped, startled, and Vernon came barreling downstairs, arriving in the kitchen with a glob of shaving cream stuck to his cheek. "What happened?" he demanded. Excuse me," he demanded, then caught sight of McGonagall and turned a strange, pasty color. The shaving cream slid gently down his slack face and splattered on the floor. The witch merely raised an eyebrow before producing 2 thick envelopes from a pocket. "Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, my name is Minerva McGonagall. I am Deputy Headmistress at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and I come to personally deliver these." She handed the envelopes to Harry and Dudley, both of whom were in a state of shock. This can't be right," Dudley whispered, staring down at his, but just like Harry's, it was addressed to the very room he slept in, Mr. D. Dursley, the second largest bedroom, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. That's all we'll read today. I'm sorry I'm leaving you on a cliffhanger. Oh my gosh, at least I didn't leave you on too much of a cliffhanger. Sorry. But Minerva McGonagall, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, Gryffindor. Yeah, those are the 4 Hogwarts houses. Yeah, I was watching Harry Potter before I started this, but whatever.